Okay, imagine this. You raise the biggest army your people have ever seen. You march on the greatest civilization on Earth, and you win. Total victory. Your guy is on the throne. Massive W. Now fast forward a couple hundred years. Your great-great-grandkids? They speak the enemy's language. They wear the enemy's clothes. They follow the enemy's traditions. And they proudly call themselves part of the very civilization you conquered. Congratulations. You didn't take over history. History took over you. And it has happened way more times than you would think. This is reverse Uno. So here's China's entire personality in one sentence. You can conquer it, but you don't get to stay you. Nomads come screaming out of the grasslands, kick down the gates, grab the throne, and then the empire just quietly digests them. Give it a few generations, and those terrifying conquerors are writing poetry in Chinese, wearing silk, and arguing about paperwork. And the best part? This didn't happen once. China pulled the same card on invader after invader. Let's count them. First up, the Xianbei. Absolute units. Horse lords from up north who ride in, carve out kingdoms, living their best nomad life. And then, character development. Over a few generations, a lot of the ruling crowd start rocking Chinese fashion, speaking the language, even swapping in Chinese family names. My brother in Conquest, you won. Why are you doing homework? Round 2. The Jurchens. They wrecked the Song armies up north, set up the Jin dynasty. Big flex. And they're like, we are keeping our whole identity, thanks. Cut to, running an entire civilization is a lot of admin. Slowly, they're using Chinese-style government, Confucian everything. The paperwork won. The paperwork always wins. Round 3, and it's the final boss, the Mongols. Biggest empire basically ever. They take China as the Yuan dynasty under Kublai Khan. Now, they kept a lot of their own thing going. Historians get very actually about this. But even they end up running the place with Chinese administration. And after the dynasty collapses, some ride back north to the steppe, others just quietly blend into the crowd. Poof. Final round, the Manchus. They take down the Ming and run China for nearly 3 centuries as the Qing. And these guys actually tried really hard to keep their identity, rules and everything. But to run the show, they still leaned on the Confucian bureaucracy and all the Chinese institutions. And over the long haul, gradual blending, region by region. Same energy, every single time. So, 4 invaders, 4 reverse Unos. Turns out conquering China is the easy part. Not slowly turning into China? That's the hard part. You can win every single battle and still lose the vibe war. GG, China. Absolutely diabolical. Okay, last chapter. China was the one flipping the reverse Uno card, passing out L's to everybody who invaded. So this time, let's meet some guys on the receiving end. The Vikings. Absolute menaces. They terrorized the coasts of Europe for like 2 centuries. And this is the story of how the scariest raiders on the continent slowly, accidentally, turned into fancy French knights. Yeah, reverse card. On them this time. So, it's the 800s. Viking longships keep showing up on the rivers of Francia, which is basically medieval France. They raid, they grab the loot, they dip before the army shows up. Rinse, repeat, for decades. The locals are terrified. Monks are literally writing prayers about these guys. They are winning so hard, which, if you saw chapter 1, is usually right when the reverse Uno music starts playing. Eventually, a Frankish king does the math. Instead of fighting these Northmen forever, he cuts a deal. He hands one of their leaders a big chunk of coastline, if they will settle down and, stop raiding everybody. That land gets a name, Normandy. Literally, land of the Northmen. Congrats, kings of the sea. You are now landlords with a mortgage. And here's where the card flips. Because when you actually settle somewhere, stuff happens. Over a few generations, a lot of these Norse families marry the locals. They pick up the local faith. They start speaking an early form of French. The longships? Rotting on the beach. The dragon banners? Traded for coats of arms. Bro woke up and chose paperwork. Feudal paperwork. Within a couple of centuries, the descendants of these raiders are mounted, French-speaking knights, running one of the most powerful territories in Europe. The Vikings didn't get wiped out. They got assimilated, reverse Uno'd, clean. Oh, and the best part? These very same Normans are about to sail across a channel and get flipped again. But that is next chapter. Plot twist. The Normans aren't done getting reverse Uno'd. You remember those Vikings who turned into fancy French-speaking knights? Well, those exact same guys are about to sail across the channel, conquer England, and get reverse Uno'd all over again. Same people, same card, different country. History looked at the Normans and just said, run it back. You genuinely cannot make this up. It's 1066. A Norman duke named William looks across the channel at England and goes, yeah, that's mine now. One very famous battle later, he's basically right. The Normans take the crown, the land, and pretty much every top job in the country. A French-speaking ruling class is now sitting on top of a whole island of English speakers. What could possibly go wrong? For the conquerors. For a while, it's almost comical. The people at the top speak French. The people doing literally everything else speak English. Same country, two totally different languages, stacked like a layer cake. The lords aren't really trying to become English. They've got the power, the castles, the fancy words. If you'd asked them, they'd have said England is theirs. It was not going to stay that way. Because here's the thing about living somewhere for a few hundred years. It rubs off. Generation after generation, the Norman elite and the English population mix. The two languages start bleeding into each other. French words pour in by the thousands, but the bones of the language stay English. Loyalties drift from we're Normans to we're English, actually. The conquerors are quietly dissolving into the conquered. Again. And you can still taste it today. Literally. The animal in the field usually kept its English name. Cow, pig, sheep. The meat on the fancy table got the French one. Beef, pork, mutton. Peasant word, posh word, fused into one language. So the Normans won England, and then slowly became English. That's twice now. Same bloodline, reverse Uno'd on both sides of the channel. Respect the consistency. Here's a reverse Uno so clean, it's hiding inside a country's name. Meet the Bulgars, a tough Turkic people from the Eurasian steppe. Horse people. Not Slavic, not European. Turkic. So riddle me this. Why is Bulgaria today a proudly Slavic country? Because these guys conquered the Slavs, and then straight up became them. Back in the day, the Bulgars ride into the Balkans and set up shop. They take charge of a big population of Slavic locals and build a powerful state, one that goes toe-to-toe with the mighty Byzantine Empire. At the top, a Bulgar ruling class. Underneath, a whole lot of Slavs. You can probably see where this is going. For a while, it's two peoples in one kingdom. A Turkic warrior elite running the show, sitting on top of a Slavic majority that vastly outnumbers them. And numbers have a funny way of winning in the long run, especially when everyone is living together, marrying each other, farming the same fields for generations. So the card flips. Bit by bit, the Bulgar elite starts speaking Slavic. Then two big things lock it in. 1. They adopt Christianity. 2. A brand new Slavic script spreads through the land, the ancestor of the Cyrillic still used today. Shared faith, shared writing, shared language. The Turkic ruling class is basically dissolving into the Slavic world around them. Fast forward, and the descendants of these Turkic conquerors are speaking a Slavic language, writing in a Slavic script, praying in a Slavic church. The only big thing left from the original Bulgars? The name, Bulgaria, a Turkic word, stamped on a Slavic nation. They conquered the Slavs so hard, they became Slavic. Reverse Uno, difficulty level, legendary. All right, this one is a flex that backfired. Beautifully. Meet the Mughals, a dynasty of conquerors from Central Asia, descended from absolute legends, Genghis Khan and Timur. They sweep into India and build one of the richest, most powerful empires the world has ever seen. And their lasting legacy? Becoming incredibly Indian. Let's go. So these Central Asian warlords roll into the Indian subcontinent with cavalry, war elephants, and early cannons, and they win big. The Mughal Empire is born. We're talking staggering wealth, massive cities, and an army that makes everyone nervous. Classic conqueror energy, on top of the world. And they are proud of where they came from. The emperors love flexing that Genghis and Timur bloodline. Their court runs on Persian art and poetry, fancy and refined. If you told an early Mughal emperor that he would basically become an Indian icon, he would have laughed at you. He's a world conqueror, thank you very much. But give it a few generations. Because when you rule a place this rich, this deep, this old, it starts rubbing off, hard. The architecture fuses local design with imported domes and arches, and produces some of the most beautiful buildings on earth. The court painters blend Persian technique with Indian style into the gorgeous Mughal miniature. Everywhere you look, the empire is going more and more Indian. And the fingerprints are everywhere today. That world-famous architecture? Instantly recognizable as India. The food, that rich Mughlai cuisine, sits on menus across the entire country. And the court's own language grew into Hindustani, spoken by hundreds of millions. The Mughals kept their name, their crown, and their pride. But the culture they left behind is one of the most Indian things imaginable. A dynasty of conquerors, absolutely reverse Uno'd by its own empire. Time for the final boss of reverse Uno. Egypt. Egypt is so old and so iconic that it doesn't just flip one conqueror, it flips them all. Persians, Greeks, Romans, one after another, they march in to rule Egypt, and one after another, they end up dressed as pharaohs. This is the civilization that basically converts its own conquerors, on repeat. Here's why. For like 3,000 years, Egypt had the most recognizable royal brand on the planet, the pharaoh look. The crook and flail, the headdress, the gods, the giant temples. It was ancient and respected even to ancient people. So if you wanted the locals to accept you as the rightful ruler, you had to speak that visual language. You had to look pharaoh. Take the Greeks. After Alexander, a Greek dynasty rules Egypt for centuries. And sure, at home they stay very Greek. But in Egypt, many of them get depicted as full pharaohs, build temples in the classic Egyptian style, and take on Egyptian religious symbolism. The most famous of them, Cleopatra, was ethnically Greek, but leaned hard into being Egypt's queen. Then comes Rome. Rome conquers basically everyone, right? Total flex. And yet, on temple walls in Egypt, you can still find Roman emperors carved in the age-old pharaoh style, making offerings to Egyptian gods. The biggest empire in the world, cosplaying as pharaohs to keep Egypt happy. Now, to be fair, none of them fully became Egyptian. They kept their own identities too. But to hold Egypt, they all kept borrowing Egypt's look, Egypt's gods, Egypt's legitimacy. The civilization set the rules, and every new ruler had to play along. So the lesson of the whole series? Rule a great civilization long enough, and you don't just rule it, you become part of its story. Reverse Uno, eternal. So there it is. China quietly absorbed almost everyone who invaded it. The Vikings became French knights. Then those exact same guys crossed the Channel and became English. The Bulgars became Slavic. The Mughals became icons of India. And Egypt? Egypt turned Persians, Greeks, and Romans into pharaohs. Turns out, winning the war is the easy part. Not slowly becoming the people you beat? That is the real final boss. So I have to know, Which conqueror got reverse Uno'd the hardest? The Mongols? The Manchus? The Vikings? The Mughals? Drop your pick in the comments, and if you had fun, subscribe to Ancient Replay, where history hits rewind. See you next time.